As chairman of the Jackson Center, sometimes you wonder how things come together. I use the term serendipity. The opportunity, for example, to have Karen Levine join us today came through a meeting set up at Chautauqua with the Karps, Norm and Nancy Karp. So I want to thank them for making this happen, because that's what's resulted in what today is happening. Similarly, our special speaker came through somewhat of a unique message. And I'm not sure how this all works, but sometimes it does. For those kids who are very good at Googling, you can, instead of typing in the Google search, just go up to News Alert, and you can type in Robert H. Jackson or Nuremberg trial, which I do, and you can get releases every day on something. Well, I had just concluded Hannah's Suitcase, and just concluded the section dealing with Theresienstadt, and that word was in my mind, and all of a sudden a news release came across, and here it is. And it says, diplomat students get Holocaust lesson. And it says, in 1941, the Gestapo came and took her parents. She never saw them again. The next year, Anneliese Salamon was taken to Theresienstadt, a concentration camp where she would spend the next 3 years. During that time, her brother was taken, and she never saw him again. As a young teenager, Salamon was orphaned the consequences of Hitler's regime. The article went on and talked a little bit about Anneliese Salamon and Theresienstadt. And you wonder, how did I get this? Because an individual who joined her at this particular event was a guy named Fred Belfour, who was a sound technician at the Nuremberg trial. So hence, it came up on my news alert, and there it was, Anneliese. And I said, incredible. So only you young kids would do what I would have thought to do, because I had to ask my kids. You get on, you do the internet search, Anneliese Salamon, Florida, all of a sudden, poof, out popped her phone. And so I called, we talked. And I introduced myself and wondered if she was the same one that was in the article. She said yes. Had she read Hannah's Suitcase? She said she'd heard of it, but had not, but would. So I called her back 2 weeks later. Oh, she was very excited, because she read it, and she could identify with that which was written by our guest author, Karen Levine. And to be able to stand here today in front of all of you and to be able to introduce that piece of living history, not only a Holocaust survivor, but a Holocaust survivor of a location of which all of you kids read the book, and many adults read the book, is just a thrill for me. So again, sometimes I don't always understand how this works, but it did. And I can't say how thrilled I am, Anneliese, to have you join us tonight. Anneliese Salamon.
It's really my place to thank you, to be invited here to talk about myself. Because about 2 years ago, I never talked, I'm sorry, about me and what happened during the war. I talked it only to my husband, who was a survivor too. Our daughters knew, but didn't know. My husband, who is dead for 3 years, in his last 6 months of life, wrote a biography, and my daughters learned about me through being interviewed at the Southwest Florida Holocaust Museum. And there, I volunteered. I thought I will be stuffing the envelope. Instead of that, they, in a year, slowly made me to talk. I couldn't. I was crying. I am sorry. I still do sometimes. But I realize that it's, for you young people, important that you see a person who really went through it, that if somebody will tell you it didn't exist, you are the last generation who is able to say Yes, it exists. We met a person. My life was very similar to Hannah's. I grew up in a very small town where the word anti-Semitism didn't exist. I was born in 1930, so we are speaking in the early 30s. When I went to grade school, I was the only Jewish child at the school, but didn't make any difference. And my life was really very nice and very pleasant till about 1938, where we started to hear the rumors what's going on in Germany, and my mother's family in that small town where we lived were talking, whispering, and speaking German, forgetting that my brother, who was 5 years older, and me too, we understood perfect German, but we still, as children, didn't realize what's going on. In September 1939, when the war started, from one day to another, I did realize what happened. When the Germans invaded Poland, then the life for the Jewish people in Czechoslovakia changed. We had right away to wear Star of David. All the children were forbidden to go to school. Please, don't say, oh yay. It is oh yay for 2 or 3 weeks, because as a child, what can you do? You can only help your mother to dust or to mix a soup, whatever, something, or knit, but you don't have friends, because there was a curfew. We were not allowed to go out. We couldn't talk, and because there were not too many children in the small town where I was, the life was really very limited. Within about a year, the Germans ordered all the Jewish people to move in one street, creating a ghetto. We could shop only in certain stores. As you heard, in 1941, Gestapo, so we moved with my parents, my brother, me and my parents, to our grandmother's house, where already was my mother's sister with her family. In 1941, one morning, Gestapo came, took my parents, as you heard, never heard about them. After war, find out that my father, right away in 1941, was sent to Auschwitz to help to build the extermination camp after the Wannsee conference, where it was decided it was going to happen with the Jews. My mother was first in Ravensbrück, and then she, after the war through Red Cross, I find out that she went to Auschwitz. In 1942, all the Jewish people from Czechoslovakia slowly started to be herded somewhere. We got an order, it was in May in 1942, to come to the regional city. Let's say you will go to Buffalo, what will be decided, with one luggage. A grandmother, as all the grandmothers, I will understand, got scared, what is the children going to wear? They put on us layers and layers of clothes, one package, hat, and we walked to the railway station, and in a regular train we went to that regional city. We were placed in a gymnasium of a high school, nothing, not anything, floor, not mattresses, and sitting, not knowing what happened. The older people were talking, crying, whispering. As children, I was almost 12, we were happy, because finally there was a child, somebody with whom you were talking, laughing, we were running, we were shushing down. It was nice, nice. For a very short time, one of the mornings we were woken up with a typical German routine, light, yelling, screaming, and we were they ran us to the railway station and put us in a boxcar. About 100 people in a car, standing like sardines, not knowing where we go. Two baskets for waste, one for water. You couldn't get to it anyway. We were lucky because they didn't close those 4 windows. I am sure some of you had a chance to see, or if you go to some museums, they have those boxcars. I was lucky because I spent only one day in it. We got out in the evening. We read the name of the station, and we have to walk. Old, young, we had to walk somewhere. We came to a place we didn't know it was Terezin. It's a garrison city which was built by the Empress Maria Theresia and her son Joseph. It's a fortress with walls about from here to here, moats, and with 4 gates to get in. So a very natural place to keep people in and not being able to get out. At the time when I came, it was just open, but there were still civilians living in the middle of the fortress. That was May 42. By the fall of 1942, a city which was built for 8,000 people, there were 40,000 people. At that time, the Germans decided that they are going to make Theresienstadt, in Czech it is Terezin, as a transit ghetto. They were sending people out east. We didn't know. Maybe some older people or something. I didn't know. I learned about extermination camps after the war. So all the Jewish people, not all, majority of the people from Germany, Austria, and Czechoslovakia first came there. Within half a year, Germans were afraid that people will know what's going on, so they built a track from the main station inside the city, so nobody ever, besides them keeping a record, knew how many people came in and out. The city had usually between 30 to 60,000 Jewish people there, but it was a turnaround. From 15,000 children who went through Theresienstadt, I'm one of 100 who survived. There was, how I survived, I don't know, I know. I think. My brother, during the first years of war, thanks to my parents who bribed a gardener, made him to learn the trade, and next to the camp was a German industrial farm, and they needed slave labor, so my brother worked there. And he saw that if you were working on a field of potatoes and you stole a potato without being caught and punished, you got to something. It was carrot. He told the overseer, lied about my age, and I was allowed, I was made to go and to work out. There, my life compared to Hannah's completely changed. She was inside, limited, they could draw or so, but I was every morning getting up, being counted, getting out from the ghetto and working outside. I think that what saved me that first of all, I had something, let's say, to eat, and they needed slave labor, so even that I was a few times in the transport to go out east, I didn't have to go. My brother was not so lucky, he went. One of the friends with whom I'm still in contact was in the same wagon as my brother. On the trip to Auschwitz, he got a nervous breakdown. He became insane, so right away when we came there, so in the selection, as the Germans wanted only a clean race, tall, blonde, healthy. Nobody did, whoever was disabled mentally or physically, so he was right away gassed and died. There was one interesting moment in 1944. I would like to tell you about that, and then I will be fast finishing. The Danish and International Red Cross heard rumors and wanted the Germans to see a concentration camp. After a long time, going back and forth, the Germans agreed that they will make Theresienstadt a model ghetto. they sent out thousands and thousands of people that only 14,000 people stayed. They beautified Theresienstadt, paint facades, put bakery, made it a regular normal city. In the main square, made a gazebo where was eventually an orchestra playing. There were some culture events, even a children's opera, Brundibar, maybe you heard, is in your book too. And for one day, those 14,000 people had to play a charade to show how beautifully the Jewish people are treated. I was chosen to be in a group of children, rehearsed. Then when the day came, we were all washed, combed, got clothes, and put in a building, different rooms, where were toys and food. We were not allowed to touch the toys and not to touch the food. When they came in, I don't know how long they were in the room. They took pictures, they made movie. In the evening, the charade was over. Next day, majority of those 14,000 people, include some of those children, went to Auschwitz. The life, if you can call it, life was continuing in Theresienstadt. The last 2 weeks of the war, there were thousands of people from that march coming to Theresienstadt as the fronts were coming from West American Allies and British Americans, the Russians. They came to Theresienstadt, brought a lot of very infectious diseases, typhoid, lot of them. So then on April 8th, when the Russians were going in a straight line from Berlin through Dresden to Prague, where was uprising, we were liberated, but there was put a quarantine on the city. And as General Eisenhower, who went from the West and saw and liberated with the American army all the camps on the West side, and when the military people wanted to help the prisoners and gave them food. So naturally, if somebody was malnourished and got a jar of peanut butter, they got a diarrhea and died. So the Russians first went through, but then came back and did what the Americans were doing for months already, put medical people and helped those undernourished people first on a liquid diet, put them together. After about 2 weeks of cleaning or so, people were able to leave Theresienstadt. I was chosen. 4 teenagers and 50 children between age of 5 and 12 to be taken by a charitable Presbyterian organization to a mansion when we were clean, fed, deloused, medical attention, and I was there. I came back to the town where I was originally from because I know how many times removed, maybe almost not a family. My mother had a cousin who in 1927 married a not Jewish guy who made her to survive. They, through Red Cross, find out that I survived. They made him a guardian. They picked me up, brought me to that little town, and I had to try to catch up 6 years of not going to school. I did, caught in a year. The whole day, let's say, in school, in the afternoon tutors, and I made an entrance exam after a year to high school. I graduated instead of 18 at 20, went to college, met my husband who was a survivor, got married, had children, lived in Prague till 1968. As you know, Czechoslovakia was a country, a communist country behind the Iron Curtain. It was not pleasant to live there with a totalitarian regime and to be a Jew under the Russians with their pogrom and everything what they always had against the Jews. It was not easy. So when the military even came, my husband said, I had enough, we had enough, let's try to get out. Twice we tried to get across the borders, we didn't make it. For the third time we did. We got to Vienna, waited 3 months for being able legally come to the United States, get a working permit. We came, we went to Milwaukee, Wisconsin. They were our sponsors. We lived there. Our girls got education, a very good education. My husband was working, he was a university professor. And we lived there. When he passed away, I moved to. I have a last sentence, which is for everyone, but special for you. Please, don't take the life for granted. Be happy that you are Americans as I am. And try to be tolerant. Forget not everything if somebody is black or white or thin or fat or ugly or not ugly, a good dresser. Be tolerant, because that's the only way how you can save, as you young people, the world. Because it's not always a nice place. Thank you very much.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you for sharing an incredible story. I can't imagine how difficult it would be to share that story, but your mission is received. You must know that. You could hear a pin drop. We thank you for the extraordinary effort you made to come up and be part of this and to be part of Karen's show. And it's just a sense of magic tonight.